Okay, welcome in. Going to continue this 32 and 32 series. Today, I'll be looking at the Houston Texans. So would win the AFC South for the second year in a row with a 10-7 record. So, we'll take a look at the team stats, their schedule, and so on and so forth. So, they started the season off on a good note, winning their first two games against the Colts and the Bears before dropping a deuce against the Vikings. After the loss to the Vikings, they would go on to win 1, 2, 3 straight games before losing to the Packers. Then they would win against the Colts, lose 2 straight against the Jets and the Lions, defeat the Cowboys, lose to the Titans, and then they would win against the Jaguars. So it almost felt like towards the end of the season, it was like win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. So it wasn't that pretty heading into week number 14, which was their bye week. After their bye week, they would then face the Dolphins, win that game, lose to the Chiefs and Ravens respectively, before finally getting a win against the Titans in their week 18 matchup. So I'm pretty sure by the time they beat the Dolphins, they'd already won the division, but then they lost 2 of their last 3 games. And momentum, I've said this before, is if you don't have momentum heading into the postseason, it can hurt you. I mean, some teams, maybe they can overcome that, but again, when you're going in inconsistently and teams are starting to see who you really are, they can plan for that, they can practice around that, and they can definitely expose you, if I'm going to be completely honest. So the Texans would finish as the number 4 seed in the AFC, which meant they took on the first wildcard team, which was the Los Angeles, not San Diego, Chargers. It was close at one point. It looked like the Chargers were gonna, get within a score of the game. Then a block field goal or a block extra point ended up leading for 2 points for the Texans, and then they would go on to rout the Chargers 32-12. They would advance to the divisional round of the playoffs. Unfortunately, it did not pan out as they would lose by 9 points, 23-14, to the Kansas City Chiefs, who I think a lot of people probably picked to win that game anyway. But it is what it is. So unfortunately, for the second year in a row, the Houston Texans got bounced in the divisional round. Last year it was to the Ravens, and obviously this year to the Chiefs. So CJ Stroud, in year number 2, he would finish with 3,727 passing yards and a 63.16 completion percentage and a touchdown to interception ratio of 20-12, so roughly 2-1 in that category. Nico Collins, a wide receiver, would finish just over 1,000 yards with 1,006 on 68 catches and 7 touchdowns. Tank Dell, the other wide receiver, would finish with 667 receiving yards on 51 catches and 3 touchdowns. Joe Mixon, the former Bengal, would finish with over 1,000 rushing yards, 1,016 to be exactly, on 245 attempts and 11 touchdowns. And then Dameon Pierce, the other running back, would finish with just 293 rushing yards on 40 attempts and 2 touchdowns himself. Daniel Hunter, the defensive end, would finish with 12 sacks on the year. Pretty impressive for one guy. 31 tackles and 1 forced fumble. Henry To'otu'u, if I say that name correctly. That's a lot of T's and a lot of O's. The linebacker would finish with 53 tackles on the year, 1.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 1 pick. Derek Stingley Jr., the cornerback, would finish with 5 interceptions, 37 tackles, and 18 pass deflections. On the special teams, Kaimi Fairbairn, I believe, the kicker, would finish with 36 field goals on 42 attempts, an 85.71 field goal percentage, not too shabby. And then Tommy Townsend, the punter, would finish with 3,649 yards on 76 punts, averaging just over 48 yards a kick. So for the Texans, like I said, a very successful, 2 successful seasons back-to-back, winning their division in each of those years. CJ Stroud has proven to me he is a very good quarterback. I wouldn't say elite because he hasn't been able to beat Mahomes or Jackson. If he had won against either one of those guys, you could say he was elite. But if you're just finishing 4th in your conference, and I don't want to say you're one and done, but if you can't make it to the championship game, Is it really a successful season? I don't know. I know it's very hard to beat the Chiefs and Ravens respectively, as they both are very good. They have very good teams. I'm stumbling over my words. I apologize, but he's good enough to win the division. I'll say it right now. I think the Texans should win the division again next year. I'm just looking in their division, and I'm thinking like the Titans are definitely going through a rebuild. They're not going to be competitive next year. The Jaguars, they got a lot of question marks. They have talent, but they just could not get their ish together for whatever reason it was this year. And the Colts, they seem to be knocking on the door. Like the Colts to me would be the only team that could give the Texans a run for their money. I mean, they did it 2 years ago when they went to the Week 18 matchup where the Texans won that, and then obviously won that division as well. And then with the Colts, they came down to the Week 17 matchup to make the playoffs. Unfortunately, they would lose, so they just fell shy of the postseason for 2 straight years. So again, if I had to think any team that could, be a problem for Texas or for Houston, I mean, it would be the Colts, but that's about it. Other than that, I think they got that division wrapped up. The only question moving forward is, can they get out of that fourth place in the AFC? If they can get to the third spot or like get to the second for whatever reason, then that would be a huge step forward. But again, if they just finish as the number 4 seed again next year, are you really making progress if you're not getting further up in the standings? I really don't know. Anyways, that's going to take care of my recap for the Houston Texans, not Texas. As always, if you're new to this channel and you like this type of content, feel free to hit the sub button. I'd be very grateful and very appreciative. Until next time, and as always, take care.